Hello, my name is Justin Howe, and this is my Module 8 presentation for EDL 851, Legal Aspects of Teacher Evaluation. My article summaries. The first article summary, the title is Teacher Evaluation, source of the NEA. Basically, it addressed state control and this Every Student Succeeds Act. Teacher evaluation design rests with the states under that act, and it also empowers states to design their own process for evaluation. It essentially takes it out of the control of the federal government and the Secretary of Education and places it in the hands of the state. So essentially every state can design their own process, their own standards, whatever they want that to look like. Second article is titled Teacher Evaluation Heads to Court. The source of Education Week, and basically it was a examination of multiple articles related to this issue. I decided to spotlight the one, Louisiana Federation of Teachers versus Louisiana, and it dealt with the constitutionality of connecting evaluation with pay scale and whether or not that was a proper thing to do. Also looked at Cook versus Bennett, which dealt with non-standardized test subject teachers' evaluation fairness. Essentially, in some schools, they come up with a way to evaluate a teacher's contribution to the school-wide growth and base their evaluation on that formula. And it was whether or not that's a fair process. Those teachers that don't get tested with standardized tests felt like it wasn't a fair approach. Teachers like phys ed teachers, CTE teachers, things like that. Article 3, the title was Teacher Evaluation and Issue Overview, and its source was Education Week. Basically examined what teacher evaluation is, how it can be applied fairly, and what should be done with the resulting data once we conduct an evaluation. Some of the highlights: evaluations are governed by state law, and this kind of goes back to Article 1, which basically laid out the fact that the states have control over the evaluation process. So it's saying that what states decide to do that way is up to them, and it comes down to a state decision. Typically designed to operate at the district level. So within the states, the districts are the ones that determine how that process will look, with some basic guidelines from the state level. Typically the components of an evaluation include observations, student work examples, and in the form of artifacts usually, and teacher lesson plans. The amount of learning achieved by students, the question was raised, does that truly gauge teacher effectiveness, or are we truly gauging it effectively with our evaluations, because 99% of teachers evaluated are shown to be effective, and is that even possible? Teacher unions were unsure about connecting pay and evaluations. That was also discussed in the article. The next part here is teacher evaluation process. In my current district that I'm in, I'm new to it and have not been evaluated or entered that process. And the subject I teach, it's kind of a strange situation where I'm not in a building per se. So I decided to address the process I was in my previous district, which I'm much more familiar with. We use McCrell. There were basically two statuses for all teachers. Either you're in the evaluation year or you're not. If you're in the evaluation year, you're either one, a new teacher in your first 3 years of evaluation, or it just happens to be the year of the rotation where you are being evaluated. Once you pass that 3-year mark, you are then evaluated every 3 years. So you'll have 2 years where you are not in the process, and those 2 years are considered your non-evaluation years, and pretty much address that. In the year where you are being evaluated, there's a pre-observation conference with the administrator, and typically the 3 or 4 administrators in your school will be assigned a certain group of teachers that they'll meet with. And there'll be, prior to that meeting, there'll be a self-assessment the teacher will complete, and then sit down with the administrator and discuss the self-assessment, talk about goals, talk about artifact collection, what's going to be expected. You talk about the lesson they're going to observe, and then they'll observe the lesson. And then there'll be a post-observation conference where strengths and weaknesses are discussed, the lesson, ways it can be improved, things they liked, didn't like. And that goes both ways. Teacher will also address those issues as well. And then at the end, there'll be a summary rating form. The administrator will assess you, and you will also assess your performance and talk about ways you can improve. On your non-evaluation years, you still have to complete a self-assessment, complete a professional development plan or update it. There's an assessment and modification of goals if that's necessary, depending on the teacher's personal preference there. Continued collection of artifacts, that's an ongoing process. Once you get an artifact you can upload to the system, it supports one of your goals, you would do that regardless of whether or not it's an evaluation year. There is no, in my district, there is no administrative conference on those years. All right. Teacher recourse. Teacher recourse. Teacher in our district feels that the evaluation is inaccurate. We have, there's a formal process, but there's also just the informal, where I personally feel, and I think most teachers feel, they could have sat down with that administrator and discussed it and come to an understanding. There wasn't that, that division there between administrator and teacher, where it would be very unexpected they would have to rise to a formal process. But if it did, there's a tiered process there. And you would start with your union, and then the building administrator himself. If your administrator is an assistant administrator, then you might go to their boss first. Beyond that, you would then go to the central office personnel that oversees the building, whether that be the one in charge of secondary instruction or directly to the superintendent himself. It just depends on the issue. And then finally, the last recourse would be the Board of Education. If it unfortunately rises to the level of being dismissed, the teacher really has one recourse, and that is legal action, and the union is there to support that effort, or the teacher could hire their own representation as well. The legal case I decided to examine was one that dealt with the Houston School Board, basically the union there and then several teachers. The issue at being examined was constitutionality of value-added evaluation systems. And essentially, this district had a secret, and I say secret because it's proprietary, because they're using a private company that had an algorithm or formula to determine the teacher's value in the school and their performance. And that formula was kept secret. And the teachers and the union challenged the constitutionality of that. And the result of the case was the court ruled teachers could not be terminated for ineffective performance based on a secret value-added algorithm. All right, there has to be that basically took away their due process rights and violated their constitutional rights. My leadership reflection: I plan to ensure I'm following legal issues associated with the evaluation process, basically by following district policy. That should be any administrator's guiding principle. To know those policies in and out, make sure everything you do abides by those policies, because you work for the school board, which develops those policies, and that is your law, essentially, that you must adhere to. After that, there's always a negotiated agreement between the teachers union and the district that must be adhered to, and then any professional development opportunities you can go to stay current on law and legal issues. Any kind of conferencing you can do with fellow administrators, both within your district and outside, I think is always a good idea. So maybe you could go visit another district. And I know our administrators did that a lot and just saw how they operated on various issues and took what they learned, brought it back to our district, and incorporated that. So that's the approach I would take. Thank you.